Retired Los Angeles Police Department Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Sergeant Dorsey, thanks for joining us. When you look at the clashes that we've seen between police and protesters, is there a way for police to handle what seemed, or at least Shimon is describing, a almost entirely peaceful protest until the police came in and blocked it, without making it even more tense? In other words, is it normal just to stop protesters from walking, or not?
Well, listen, certainly there's a way for officers to handle protesters without being confrontational. Police officers are taught to use only that force necessary to overcome resistance and or gain compliance. And so understand that there's a segment of police officers out there who live for protests. They want to engage. They want to get involved in what, I've heard referred to on LAPD as stick time, because there's no use of force report that you have to create once you engage a protester in that way. And so there are those who live for that on both sides, right? There are antagonists on both sides.
What was your response to what we heard from the Attorney General of Kentucky today and the grand jury in terms of the Breonna Taylor case?
Well, I'm not surprised. I'm a realist, and so I deciphered all of his doublespeak and code talk, and we know that this is really a non-indictment. It has nothing to do with Breonna Taylor. This was about Officer Brett Hankinson firing rounds into the next-door neighbor's apartment. It had nothing to do with the murder of Breonna Taylor. Those officers, according to the Attorney General, were justified in that use of force. Now, I don't know how 16 shots fired by one is justified use of force when officers are taught to fire 2 shots in rapid succession and then reassess the threat. But nonetheless, that was his story and he's sticking to it. And I found it offensive that he would call out celebrities and alleged influencers because he too says he's a black man and somehow celebrities can't speak for Kentuckians, but as a black man, he can speak for us. And so I understand he's skinfolk, not kinfolk. He doesn't speak for me.
How do you begin to repair relations between communities and their police force when there is clearly so much anger and so much distrust?
Well, you have to first be honest, and I haven't heard any of that. Even with this $12 million settlement in the case of Breonna Taylor, there are all these faux reforms, things that were only promises, not anything that really they have to do. The city council must approve much of this. And then let's not forget that there's no admission of wrongdoing. And so, listen, if he didn't do anything wrong, I don't even know why Hankerson was fired in the first place. They came up with this no-knock warrant. You need a supervisor to sign off on it. That should have already been in existence. And so everything that they pretend to put forward really doesn't affect patrol officers, me, when I'm in uniform day to day in my patrol car. It won't stop. And we know that because we saw Derek Chauvin sit and have us watch him for 8 minutes and 46 seconds on the neck of George Floyd and dared us to do anything about it.
Do you think the other 2 officers should have been charged?
Well, absolutely. They were there, and one of them was a sergeant, and so I hold that sergeant to a higher standard. But we've got the Attorney General saying that it was justified. Now, they're giving their truth. I don't know that it's the truth. They're saying that Breonna, her boyfriend, fired the first shot. I don't know that that's true. We know that they'll lie. They have. They said that they rendered aid. They said that there were no cameras. They said that they announced. And there's been evidence contrary to all of that. And so now we're stuck with their version of events. And that's what happens when the police kill us. There's only one version to tell, and that's the one they put forth. I'm not buying it.
The Attorney General of Kentucky is starting up this task force to review the process for securing and executing search warrants in Kentucky. So that appears some sort of tacit acknowledgement that something went wrong, in addition to the $12 million payment to the family of Breonna Taylor and the firing of Officer Hankinson. But based on the charges, no one is actually being held responsible for her death.
Absolutely. I mean, Hankerson is being indicted because he fired rounds with wanton disregard into a neighbor's apartment. It has nothing to do, no mention of Breonna Taylor. And so he gets no brownie points for starting a task force where they're going to look at and review things that should have already been in place. And then when they violate their own policies and procedures, they'll tell us, that's not what you saw. That's not what we did. Carry on.
The governor of Kentucky wants the Attorney General to make all of the evidence in the case public. Governor Andy Beshear, who's a Democrat, says the public deserves to know the facts. The Attorney General is a Republican. Do you think that would be enough to calm those who are angry over the lack of charges for Breonna Taylor's death, releasing the evidence?
I mean, listen, release the evidence if you want to or not. What families want, what everyone seems to be most upset about is a failure to hold police officers accountable when they do things that are contradictory to training and or law. So make it available or not, but hold the officers accountable. And we know that that won't be happening in this case because we've already heard from the AG that in his mind, 16 shots through a closed door or an open door if they just entered is somehow justified. It's offensive.
Cheryl Dorsey, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.